Okay, this is the Hex Command Napoleonics Gunpowder PowerPoint presentation that we've got on the website, and I wanted to just give you an idea of how it works, so I'm going to capture it for you. Up in the right-hand corner, you can see we have a little house. That's the home screen, if you will, which is what we're looking at right now. So these are nice big buttons. Wish we had phones that look like this, right? Nice and easy. So we can begin with the first one, which is unit design. And this basically tells you that every infantry stand is a battalion of 6 to 8 figures. And every regiment consists of 2 to 3 battalions, which would be 2 to 3 stands. And your brigade would be 2 to 3 regiments. Your demi-brigade, up to a certain point in the war, would be up to 2.5 battalions. In other words, it would be like 3 stands would be called a demi-brigade, if you will. Maybe 4 stands or 5 stands, something odd like that would be called a demi-brigade. And the division, of course, would be 1 to 3 brigades. Obviously more than 1 brigade, but that's what happened during the war. Sometimes you'd only have a division or a brigade in the division, maybe because other circumstances, but that's the way it turned out. Anyway, generally there's 2 to 3 brigades to a division. And the cavalry stand is a squadron, which there's 2 to 3 mounted figures per stand. It doesn't matter really, but we sometimes find, depending on the manufacturer, how many figures can be mounted to a stand. An example of how big the stand is, you can see in here right now with this commander. Right here, this commander stand. That's kind of the same size as a cavalry stand. So it could take 3 horses, sometimes 2, depending on how much you want to invest in making it look like it's pretty crowded, because it kind of would be, although there's debate as to if that was even true. Battalion would be 3 to 4 squadrons. Regiment would be 2 to 3 battalions. Artillery is 1 gun. Which is removable. The crew's glued down to the base, as you see in the bottom picture here, and the gun's removable. So it has 2 to 4 crew, generally 4 crew. And that represents 2 actual guns. 2 gun sections. I'm sorry. Well, it's a gun section or well, it represents 2 guns. Whether you call 2 guns a section or half a battery or something of that nature, it represents 2 guns. And the limbers, as you can see here, it's kind of a quickie built limber because we needed more of them at the time and they weren't available yet. We've created our own. So those little big wheels back there are from another cannon that we picked up in the internet, which was a cheap little plastic cannon. But the wheels were nearly the proper size for a limber. That's why we created it that way. And it'll work for now. So the limber's in front of the gun when it's being pulled, and then behind the gun, as you see here, when the gun's actually in action. It doesn't have to be right up next to it. Obviously, it can't be in the same hex, but it would be in the... Well, that's not true. It could be in the same hex. It can be overlapping, but the fact is that the limbers wouldn't be that close. They would be some distance behind the location of the actual artillery. So just click the screen and we can move forward. Here's the movement and terrain rules, if you will. That's really what all this is, a summary. Infantry, foot, artillery, and wagons are moving 2 hex per turn. Command skirmishers, light infantry, 3 hex. Horse artillery is moving 5. We think sometimes that should be 4. 5 is almost the exact same speed as light cavalry, so it seems like that's pretty fast. And then cavalry speeds are heavy with 4 and light for 5. Units are routing 3 hex per turn until they rally, or rallied by a commander. Each obstacle adds a TE hit as usual, and units recover a fatigue or a TE hit every turn that they make no movement. Continued, TE hits are applied as usual for each terrain effect when the units are moving full speed. If the units don't move full speed and they encounter a terrain, it does not affect them. They have to be moving full speed. And that's the way we've tweaked this lately for 2017. And then we see more rulings on TEs and optional ideas and so on. Cavalry in this era sees much more. Obviously, it's the last or nearly the last major world conflict where cavalry is of a substantial proportion of the armies. There is some important things to consider about cavalry and the reality of infantry forming square. So be advised to research the rules of Hex Command and see exactly what's involved when targets can form square and when they can't, how effective it is, and so on and so forth. It's very important. So there's a bunch of stuff here. I'm not going to go over it, but that's essentially the idea. Forming square and so on. And then we talk also about skirmishers. So again, we can go back to the home page of this PowerPoint presentation, and we can come back to skirmishers. But anyway, so there's skirmishers right here, and we got some very important things to say about skirmishing and cavalry skirmishers and the realities as opposed to what was actually that was recorded in history. And there's more information about artillery and canister and the fact that there's no rifled guns and so on and so forth. And then also how to set up the game, forces and commanders, the turn sequence. Here we show the brigade file card, and that's essentially it. And again, we show this magnificent picture from Italeri's French Arzvezda's French artillery. I just realized that this is in here like 3 times, this image, and it's like, well, I wish somebody would do the American Civil War like this. There's some interesting things to note here, and I remember we did the image forensics on the siege of Magdeburg, which was a very interesting lithograph. But here we can see something. It's very interesting. First of all, these guys are heavily encumbered. They're wearing their rifles. Well, you gotta believe, first of all, when they're in action, those packs are coming off, right? And the rifles are not going to be slung that way. And as a matter of fact, they may just be so disrobed because they're working the gun. To be fully clothed and active like this is like marching outfitting. So it seems a little unlikely. I don't know. Maybe they would get reprimanded for being out of uniform if they took any of the stuff off, but I don't know. I think it seems to reason that they would be so hot in all this garb while they're working the gun, it would be impossible. Anyway, the guy behind the guy right here, the guy in the foreground with the ramrod is interesting. He's got it in the right position, ready to ram down the load, and this guy back here, he's got the load, okay? But the problem is, I think he's putting it in backwards. Okay, right here, I think this guy's putting it in backwards. It looks as if the shot, and if this is the powder charge, he's got that backwards. That's really interesting. Now, here's another interesting character here. This is the guy with the plunger that is going to be clearing the what's the name of the hole for the powder charge to be at the top of the cannon in the back. It's where the American Civil War, you'd put the lanyard here. There were no lanyards, if you can. I don't know why that would be, but there's no lanyards. They're using actual wicks, I believe. They're still holding. And here's the guy right here, as a matter of fact. There he is. This guy right here, can't see him, is holding a wick, and it looks like it's an ember burning. So, and then we have a character here. It looks like he's bent over. He's either sighting the gun or he's getting ready to help move it. And then this guy back here with the 2 sticks, rods, is positioning the gun. So, and then we have our officer character here. Interesting to note, he's wearing some kind of an odd water bottle. I don't remember this kind of bottle, but I'm not an expert. Granted, I'm not an expert on Napoleonics. I don't know if that is actually that common enough to show in this picture. I don't know. Anyway, in the background, we have the artillery, the other artillery part of this section, or this group. And they're all encumbered the same. They're all heavily decked out. And we have our limber, which in this time period is only a limber for moving the gun. the ammunition is carried by another limber, which is back here in the background. And here we see all the activity going on behind the artillery. So it must have been huge, this kind of a adventure, this kind of a scene must have been just unbelievable. And also, it's important to note what kind of guns these are. It looks to me as if they are, if not 12 pounders, they're close to 9 or 7, but they're certainly not 6. I don't think it's realistic to think that that is a 6-pound gun. I don't know. It's hard to say. In a sense, it's hard to say because the size of the shot the guy's got backwards, at least it appears he's got it backwards. It's funny. Look at his face. It almost like, am I doing it right? So he's looking for reassurance. Actually, I think I just sounded like a German. It's supposed to be a French. Okay. And this guy obviously isn't going to say anything or hasn't had a chance yet, but I imagine he would say no or oui, but certainly, right? Pretty strange. Anyway, that's the idea. You can download the PowerPoint presentation and check it out. It's just a nice way to look at the rules and be reminded. Even while you're playing the game, have a monitor set up next to the game so you can flick through them.